Roll call, please.
Mr. Gambka.
Here.
Mr. Pulis.
Yes.
Ms. Miller. Yes. Mr. Stillwell.
Yes.
Ms. Winchester.
Here.
Chief Wentz.
Here. Now, you all stand for Pledge of Allegiance. In the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Motion by Winchester, is there support?
I'll second.
Support by Stillwell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial. They do not require discussion by NOCFA board, and they will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired on an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will automatically be moved to the last item under new business. Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Winchester, is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Gambka. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pulis.
Yes.
Ms. Miller. Yes. Mr. Stillwell.
Yes.
Ms. Winchester.
Yes.
And Mr. Gambka.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Next, we will move on to public comment on agenda items only. Members of the public may address the board once recognized by the chair. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Prior to addressing the board, members of the public will state their name and address for the record. A second public comment is available prior to the adjournment of the meeting for all other comments. Thank you for your cooperation. Anyone wish to speak?
Dan Johnson, 8635 Pittsburgh Trail, Holly, Michigan. I was just curious on new business E. Can you guys tell us what the topic is without giving away the details?
Going into closed session, it's to discuss attorney-client privilege.
Okay, so you can't tell us what you're
I
going to
just did.
I was looking for just a little bit more detail on it.
Okay. Mr. Stern.
Louis Stern, 1445 Munger Road. One of the nicest things I'm going to say, thank the new recording secretary, Diane Hill, in my estimation, did a great job. It was, the format was understandable, something that we haven't had in a couple years. So I'm going to direct the remainder of my comments pretty much to Gambka. Everyone else is pretty competent. There's 2 subjects I'm going to intermingle, but he's pretty well versed at intermingling things. The item of articles of incorporation and the closed session. Articles of incorporation of this item has been tabled time after time over 2 years. I think, I think maybe 6 times. Kicking the can, George kicking the can down the road. Last time you postponed it because Debbie wasn't up to speed. Time before that was because there weren't 5 members, even though there would have been adequate numbers. Another time, I think, is when Mr. Stillwell was new. So I hope that we finally get our shit together and incorporate the common sense rules of no fired employees. Who would have a fired employee on their board of a corporation? It's ridiculous. The other item, E of new business.
Mr. Stern, remind you that we have children in the room also.
Okay, sorry, thanks. I always need that reminder. The Open Meetings Act. It's not difficult. I got a few pages of it right here. Open Meetings Act, really got pretty simple items in here that, I'm sorry, second. The items, that are important are, first of all, I'll tell what shouldn't be on here. Nothing about schools are going to be discussed tonight. Nothing about employment is going to be discussed tonight. Theft, embezzlement. I don't think those are reasons to have it put in closed session. Also, anticipation of litigation is not a reason to have closed session. Quickly, dismissal and suspension of or discipline of employees. That's going to be discussed tonight. Public officers, employees are not going to be discussed tonight. They're not proposed. Sessions connected with negotiations of collective bargaining are not going to be discussed tonight. Real estate, no, not tonight. Trial and settlement strategies, not tonight. Applications for employment, not tonight. So there is no reason for this to be secreted away in closed session like the Rose Township administration likes to do. And again, that's pretty much directed to Gambka because everyone else is pretty well aware of what their fiduciary responsibilities are. Actually, some CPAs must not know how to do that.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Are you on the move? You look like you're on the move. Oh, on the move.
Moving on.
Oh, gotcha. All right, we will move into presentations. Swearing in of a new full-time firefighters.
I'd like to thank all the family and friends of our two newest full-time members of our fire department for being here. We're going to take a second here, myself and the Chairman Cullis, and swear them in. Just a little bit of background. Back in August of last year, the board granted approval of two new full-time positions to the department, which totals 10 now. We started interview processes back in November and did a very extensive interview process. But I think we had 5 or 6 candidates that went through the process. And out of that, the two gentlemen that are here tonight to be sworn in, Logan Finkbeiner and Nicholas Tosh, were the ones that scored the best out of our process that we do and were awarded the full-time positions. So with that, as customary, we are going to swear them in tonight. They've actually been on for a couple weeks now officially. But we're going to swear them in tonight officially as professional career firefighters tonight. So I will call you, I guess I'll go alphabetical order, if you will. We'll start with firefighter Logan Finkbeiner. Would you come up to in front of the podium here? Chairman Cullis, would you be up front and
Raise your right hand. If you will repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Logan Finkbeiner,
Do hereby declare
do hereby declare
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
Constitution of the State of Michigan,
the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that is a member of the North Oakland County Fire Authority.
and that is a member of the North Oakland County Fire Authority.
My duty is to serve the people
My duty is to serve the people
and to safeguard and preserve life and property
and to safeguard and preserve life and property
against fire and all other perils.
and against fire and all other perils.
I will uphold the standards of my profession
I will uphold the standards of my profession,
and I accept these obligations as my responsibility
and I accept these obligations as my responsibility,
and make these promises so solemnly,
and make these promises so solemnly,
freely,
freely,
and upon my honor.
and upon my honor.
It's dated this day, January 23rd, 2023. Congratulations.
Thank you.
She can get up there and
Well, I'm already set it up to be such.
Firefighter Crash.
I should know better.
Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Nicholas Tosh,
Do hereby declare
do hereby declare
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that as a member of the North Oakland County Fire Authority,
and that as a member of the North Oakland County Fire Authority,
my duty is to serve the people
my duty is to serve the people,
and to safeguard and preserve life and property,
and my duty to serve the,
just blank, and to safeguard and preserve
and to safeguard and preserve
life and property.
life and property.
Take a deep breath. Look at through this.
You already got the job.
Yeah.
Against fire and other perils.
Against fire and other perils.
I will uphold the standards of my profession,
I will uphold the standards of my profession
and I accept these obligations as my responsibility,
and accept these obligations as my responsibility,
and make these promises so solemnly,
and make these promises so solemnly,
freely,
freely,
and upon my honor.
and upon my honor.
It's dated this date, 23rd of January, 2023. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The whole group.
Family and friends that came for the swearing in, feel free to leave at this time. I'm sure you probably don't want to sit through this. Unless you want to, then by all means.
And actually, before those families leave, we thank you for your service as well, standing behind these men.
Kate is out back.
Are you tailgating again?
Yeah.
I know. Now, next we have the presentation of the audit by is it Pfeffer, Hannaford, and Polka?
Yes, Mr. Charlie Hanstock from Viper Hanford and Paul Plus here.
What was the name again?
Charlie Hainstock.
Hainstock. She's over here taking notes.
Spell the first name.
Hainstock.
So on the audit presentation, I'm going to start on page 36 of the financial statements, the bigger book that you have. Overall, the audit went very smooth this year. It generally has been smooth with you guys for several years. Chief Lentz and Pam Mazik do a great job of getting all the information together, keeping it well organized, and making the process go pretty smoothly for it. Looking at page 6 of the financial statements, this shows a summary of the revenues and expenditures for both funds that you have for the authority, the general fund and the capital replacement fund. Overall, looking over at the far right column, you'll see the biggest number I'm looking at is down near the bottom. It's the net change in fund balance for the two funds. You increased fund balance by $77,000 this year. Majority of that was into the capital replacement fund, where you moved $150,000 into that fund to bump that up to an overall fund balance of $388,000. Overall, you're at a net fund balance for both funds of $415,000. We've commented on that in the past few years that that's a little lower than where we like to see in general. Generally, we like to see your fund balance be between about a half a year's of expenditures to 1 year's worth of expenditures. You look at the total, you're at about 2.2 million in total annual expenditures. So we'd like to see that kind of keep rising, get close to that, 1 million range, something in there would be an ideal place to see the authority get to. And to flip 2 pages back to page 38, or hold on a minute. Yeah, 38. This, I just want to point out, this is the summary of just your general fund total revenues and then expenditures by category or classification. The big part I want to point out here is that overall expenditures came in $48,000 under budget of what you guys had budgeted for the year. Just want to kind of commend Chief on that, of keeping the expenditures in line and really putting those in good shape. I want to jump back into the beginning of the financial statement. There's one item I wanted to note here. I believe it is page 17. Page 17 shows your balance sheet for the authority on the fund financial statement side of things. This is for the combined both your general fund and your capital replacement fund combined. The biggest area I want to point out is we talked about that fund balance just a moment ago. You're a little over $415,000 total. $388,000 of that's committed to your capital reserve fund. So that's what you guys have set aside for capital improvements, building improvements, fire trucks, apparatus, things of that nature. We have $20,000 that's considered non-spendable, meaning you've already paid that out prior to June 30th for expenditures that are going to be recognized in the next fiscal year. So that's not available. So that leaves you guys at $6,000 in unassigned fund balance. That's cutting it pretty close, pretty low. We just want to bring that to your attention so you know that it is, a very low unassigned fund balance, and kind of draw that attention to working to build that up and give yourselves a little bit more breathing room in there for anything that does come in. And through the rest of the current portion of the year that has happened, in the remaining 6 months that happens through this next fiscal year. Items of consideration there. We have our standard comments and recommendations order that's provided. There's really only one comment, which is establish control over the financial reporting process. That's a standard comment that nearly all of our entities get, which essentially says you're responsible for the financial statement. You rely on us to draft it. But ultimately, it's you guys taking responsibility for the financial statement. And then we have a set of graphs for you. There's really not a whole lot in there to discuss. The last one on page 4 shows the overall history of the fund balance of the authority. You can see that's been building back up over the last several years. This is page 4, fund balance graphs. And you'll see that's starting to build back up from a low of where it was about 180,000 a couple of years ago. And so we'd like to still see that keep rising over the next several years. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And
Are there any questions? Mr. Hainstock? None, Gary. I want to thank you for your presentation.
thank you. And then Chief, you do a motion to accept that?
That's right.
I would make a motion to accept the fiscal year 2022 audit.
Nice job.
Motion by Clerk Winchester,
1 second.
second by Miller. Any further discussion?
Yeah, next year you have to get the attorney right.
That,
The attorney is about 2 at the beginning. Laddie is no longer our attorney.
Okay,
Just, no big deal, just no.
thank you. Appreciate it, Tom.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coolis,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Stillwell,
Yes.
Ms. Winchester,
Yes.
Mr. Gambka.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Under unfinished business, as we have been trying to get a board complete along with our attorney,
That's gonna sell this.
she. Sorry. So we don't actually have. When we come out of closed session, that's when she'll make that presentation that she's got.
John, yeah, the last.
Yeah.
I'm open meeting.
the last-
Yes.
Okay,
the
yeah.
last agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
It just didn't get worded that way, but okay. So then the articles of incorporation, at this point will be tabled until we get to that information. We probably should have moved that to the top, but that's where it is for now. Do we need a motion to table that then? The articles of incorporation? Or can we just take an action at this time?
Why can't she just present it right now? No?
Yeah, I can.
You want to do that?
Sure, let's-
We'll do it under that. Okay.
All right. Well, one, I am grateful that I wasn't here last month. Here's why. You all will be too. COVID and the flu spread through my house. Hurricane Katrina, and I would have only probably passed it on to everyone here. So, yes, I'm glad I couldn't make it, but the client who I was with that night wasn't so happy. Anyway, what I'd like to discuss with everyone on the board is some basic legal fiduciary duties. And I'm hoping,
Excuse me, can we turn one of the lights down so the board's can be seen easier?
You're doing it right now.
there we go.
Thank you.
All right, so the idea here is that I'd like to go over some authority fiduciary duties with everyone here, because one of the tasks that I had at the beginning of this was to put together conflicts of interest and to try to get some rules for this board put together. But in order to do that, I need one, you guys were going to give me input on kind of what you were looking at, but two, I need everyone here to understand what your role is, your fiduciary duties, and what you can and can't do. Because there have been some overstepping in the past. I, as a former assistant city attorney in Saginaw, and some of my former municipal roles have seen this in action. And only bad things come of it. You can have personal liability. You can put the township, either township, Rose Township, Holly Township, or this board in jeopardy by overstepping your bounds. And what I'm going to try to do today is just give you a general idea of what those bounds are with some conversations about where we're going with this. So first, I think it's important that everyone understands where your authority comes from. And your authority is coming out of the emergency sections of the municipality statute. And that's important because you are considered a new authority, kind of a hybrid. The Articles of Incorporation by Rose Township and Holly Township have created the North Oakland Fire Authority. And here's why that's relevant. That governs your duties as a board member, your obligations and your liabilities, both personal and professional. If you go outside the scope of your authority that is set forth in the North Oakland Fire Authority Incorporation articles, there's liability, personal mainly. And the other problem is that the board loses its governmental immunity. Governmental immunity is this, is when this board, Rose or Holly Township, gets sued for governmental action, even for negligence, they have a defense called governmental immunity, which means that it acts as a defense. You have no liability as a result of it. However, if you breach these responsibilities, your governmental immunity defense is out the window. And I cite the section on governmental immunity because it's important. A governmental agency is immune from tort liability if the government agency is engaged in the exercise or discharge of a governmental function, except as otherwise provided in this act, because you know all legislators have to throw this gobbledygook in. Except as otherwise provided in this section, and without regard to your discretionary or administrative nature of your conduct, each officer and employee of a governmental agency, each volunteer, and each member of a board, that's you guys, created task force of a governmental agency is immune from tort liability for injury to a person or damage or property caused by the officer, employee, or member while in the course of employment or service caused by the volunteer while acting on behalf of a governmental agency. If all the following are met. So as long as you're doing your board activities and it's a governmental action, as long as you're acting in the scope of your authority. The governmental agency is engaged in the exercise or discharge of a governmental function. The officer, employee, member, or volunteer's conduct does not amount to gross negligence, which is approximate cause of the injury or damage. This is what this means. So as a board member, you have a chair. And if this board wants to enter into a contract, let's say someone else from this board negotiates a contract, even if it's for simple snow plowing, you do not have authority to do that. Only your chair is the authority to enter in contracts on behalf of the board or by vote. If you decide to go outside of the scope of the authority of the articles and you guys enter into a contract, make representations on behalf of the board without authority, then you lose the governmental immunity. And the bigger problem is that it can cause you to have personal liability. You can be personally sued for that contract. So let's say you enter into a contract without proper authority from this board or by the chair of the board. So what happens at that point is that you then become personally responsible for the obligations under that contract. So if a board member contacts me with a legal question, and in my career it's happened a lot, I will have board members call and say, hey, Rita, there's a sign in my neighbor's yard that says, honk, it's my birthday. Is that legal? Well, guess what? You've not just engaged me as your personal attorney. I'm not answering the question on behalf of the board. This goes outside the scope of your authority as a board member. That means you have to pay me directly. And if you've put me in a conflict position where I am issuing legal advice that is in conflict of my obligations as this board, then I then have an ethical obligation to step down from my position as the attorney for this board. So what we have to look at for scope of authority, and this is what the statute says, is what's your position? What does the charter and ordinance say about what authority you have? And the structure and powers of the level of government, meaning this, you as a board, you guys have no authority over, let's say, the police department. So if somebody here decides to buy 20 police cars for Holly Township, or I've got Holly on the mind, the state of Michigan, You have no authority to enter into that contract. That's void. And you're personally liable for it, not this board. So the relevant question that always has to be asked is, am I doing or an action that is within the scope of my authority as a board member? Can I do this? Can I call Lauer and ask her about this hideous sign on my neighbor's lawn that says, honk, it's my birthday? What do I look at? You have to look at the Articles of Incorporation, which governs your board and officer duties. And I got to tell you something, these things are really bare bones, which is fine. We can add to the bones. But when we go and look at you guys acting outside the scope of authority, not only can you be personally liable and sued for it, you then become responsible for any contract or actions or acts that you have engaged in outside the scope of your authority as a board member. And that can cause problems even for this board, because it may put the board in a conflicted position and make it unable to act. And the other problem is you could actually be sued for personally for defamation, acts of misappropriation, conversion, depending upon what the scope of your question was. Let's go back to that question of the sign. Let's say your neighbor is the chief. You're calling me saying, hey, Rita, this sign on my neighbor's lawn is hideous about honk, it's my birthday. And then I find out it's the chief's lawn. Arguably, that's not defamation, but let's say the sign says something defamatory that the chief is married his first cousin or something. And you're asking me about that. You're asking me about that. It says, hey, the chief's got a sign, or the sign on his front lawn that says, I've married my first cousin. This is awful. Is this legal to have it in the front yard? So not only have you defamed the chief, you've engaged Madden Hauser as your own personal attorney. You have now engaged in a scope of that's beyond your authority as a board member to even contact me and ask me that question. And it could actually snowball from there, because I'm now conflicted, because if the chief comes out and says, hey, I've been defamed, Madden Hauser steps back and say, hey, we can't represent you on this. This is a board problem. And then we send the bill to the board member who called me about the sign on his lawn saying, hey, I'm married to my first cousin. And all of this is really important because it does happen in the real world. It happens all the time in the real world. So when we look at some of these conflicts of interest, we've actually seen some of these issues in the township. We've had situations where board members have contacted prior attorneys that have stood in my place and said, hey, I have a problem with this employee. I have a problem with the chief. I have a problem with this officer. What can we do to get that person terminated? What can we do to take actions against that employee? That's a significant problem, because not only is it a breach of the fiduciary duty that you owe as a board member, it's outside the scope of your authority to ask that question if you're not authorized by this board to do it. And so I need to make it very clear that when we move forward on issues, if one of you guys call me out of the blue and it's not about a lawn sign, and it's about this board, I'm going to have to step back and say, I'm sorry, I can't take the question. It has to come through the president or the chair of the board. And I can't be conflicted. And I'm not doing it to hurt your feelings. I'm not doing it because I don't love everybody on this board. I'm doing it because I'm ethically required to. That said, when we amend the articles, when we look at doing a scope project with respect to trying to come up with some ideas and better ideas about the relationship between this board, the community, and who can sit on this board, these are ideas that we have to take to bat. And there's a reason. Sometimes, or at least what I've heard, is that there are some people who say, well, you know, my primary scope is to represent Rose Township. And there might be decisions that come before you that Rose Township can't be at the forefront. Your fiduciary duty is to this board and to make the best decisions you can on behalf of this authority. So there will be some times where you will be conflicted, but I need you to take that to bat in the future to say, hey, Lauer, you know what? We can't have people on this board in the future who are disgruntled or who may have an axe to grind because they won't be able to meet their fiduciary duties or their obligations. And so we really need to think about this when we put together some policies and procedures. And we really need to think about this from the perspective of putting those policies and procedures together to incorporate some of this stuff. Does anybody have any questions? Dispute, debate? Come on, you guys. It's only 7:30. I've been up a little bit. Nothing?
Basically, you just said that this board has to make a motion in order to call you.
Pretty much. You have to make a motion. You can't just call me up. I know you want to. I know you know where you know where I live. You know my running route.
And it has to be approved.
It has to be approved.
And the man has to call you.
The man has to call me, and that's how we keep our attorney-client privilege. And if you call me, and it's about an issue you have with, let's say, one of the firefighters, and you just call me out of the blue, well, you have now arguably put yourself at risk to pay my bill directly, and at $385 an hour on my regular rate, I don't think you want to do that. And two, if you've said something that is defamatory, then or some other issue, then we got another problem. And so that's why I'm really trying to propose that, going forward, we incorporate this type of stuff into our policies and procedures so everybody knows and everyone can follow it. And it's not always fun and it's not always clear, but my job is to try to make it as fun and as clear as possible. But yes, that's exactly what I said. Yeah.
So for clarity, that's the process for board issues.
Correct.
For my stuff that I do for HR purposes to run the
Right.
department, that's a different story.
Right. That's a completely different
I
story.
just wanted to.
Right.
make
No,
that clear.
HR employment stuff is a completely different story. We have obligations with respect to the employees, confidentiality, et cetera, and that's completely separate.
And I understand that. I just wanted to say it so that everybody in this room understands that.
Right. But again, if you got a sign in your front yard, nobody on the board's calling me about that one, except for the chair.
Okay, so to add to that clarity, what Mr. Stillwell said was no call can be made to you unless the board approves it. The chair has, regardless of whether it's me or not.
Right.
The chair can call me when there's a question without having the board approve it.
Oh.
Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. The chair can call and say, hey, Rita, we need this. We need to prepare this. That's it. You don't need a motion to contact me from that standpoint. Now, if it's something a little different, let's say you guys decide that you are going to sue the Michigan State Police. They dropped the ball with something out here, whatever it is. Then at that point, when you're going to start litigation or you're going to take some affirmative action, obviously we go into closed session, have a quick conversation about that. But yes, that would be a board authority type of vote where you would basically be retaining and we'd have to go through a little more lengthy process on something like that. Okay, make sense? Yes, no?
As a board member, and I see a firefighter that doing something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
I can go directly to the chief, bend his ear.
Yes, exactly.
I don't need to bring it out in public and everybody, we can
No.
handle it in-house. I'm a firm believer. You have a problem with your neighbor, you gotta talk to your neighbor first.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, but you don't call me.
As a board member talking to the chief about something, that is an issue.
What I'm saying is you're going to the chief about the employee. You're not going to him as a board member. You're going to him as a member of the community. Hey, I've got a problem with this.
So I have a different hat when I go to talk to you directly.
Exactly. And that's what I want you to think about is wearing that hat. What hat are you wearing when you make the representation? You call my office and say, hey, Rita, I'm calling from the board. We've got this legal issue. Research it. You're presenting to me that you've got a board hat on. That's very different than walking up to the chief saying, hey, we got a problem with this employee. You got a firefighter here that's way out of bounds. All right. Any questions? There's no fighting you guys at all? Come on. No caffeine or anything? All right. So any other questions? No? Now that said, I really think that 2023 is our year where we put policies and procedures together for this board. I would like to see that. I do think that you need to make some amendments to your articles of incorporation because they are pretty bare bones. I want to say that no real fine legal work was put into that. And
It was plagiarized.
it was plagiarized. It really was plagiarized, which is all well and good. It's all well and good, you know, and just for the record, Laddie and I talk all the time, sometimes about you guys and the board. He wants to know how everybody's doing. But yeah, we need to kind of add to that a little bit and punch it up and get the policies and procedures done. So I'd like to start working on those. If you guys could start putting ideas together and give them to the chief or give them to the chair so that he can email them so that I can start getting those done, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to new business. Request to approve revenue debt collections assessment to a 7-week period. Chief?
Actually, since Mr. Hainstock is still here, I'm gonna have him talk about that a little bit. That was, a suggestion from our auditors when they did our audit this year.
Anybody get that?
Thank you. Yeah, so we had talked through the audit about looking at the collections that you have with Arbor Professional Services. This is a collection company that has been attempting to collect outstanding cost recovery charges to various responses that you've had. When we look at the balance of it, what we have as what the authority has approved as a policy is, anything for, you may have to correct me in the terminology here, but basically anything for a medical run that is then transported, gets billed to the patient. It goes through a process. If it becomes uncollectible, it gets handed off to Arbor Professional Services. Based on prior history, the board has approved just creating an allowance for uncollectible amounts of 72% of that balance. Just assume you're never going to see that money. What's happened is Arbor Professional has kept every account that you've ever placed with them on their records.
Since 2001.
So that's built up to a total placed of 456,000, of which a total outstanding was 337,000. So you collected about 118,000 of what was placed. We talked with Chief about writing off anything over the 7-year statute of limitations on that. Because really that's not collectible. If somebody argued that, it's going to just be deemed uncollectible. So, and is that?
That's correct.
Yeah. So Chief had reached out to Arbor Professional, got what that would be. And that would essentially be, if once they wrote that off, they'd be writing off 257,000 of what was originally placed, which still has a balance of 167,000 or $176,000 uncollectible. So it's our belief that amount should be written off from your books as that's currently sitting in your accounts receivable. So writing that down from the 337 down to the 176,000, or hold on,
257.
So it was writing off 257, what was originally placed, 176 remains outstanding. So be writing it down from 337,000 to 161,000 as currently outstanding receivables. On top of that, we had looked at what you actually collected of all of those accounts, especially the stuff that's been written off. You've actually collected about 32% of those. So everything that's gone through the full collection process that we really don't expect any more activity on, you've collected about 32%, which tells me your allowance should be more at a 68% than 72% allowance for uncollectible for anything new that you place. So it would be our suggestion that you write down the balance, write off everything over 7 years, and then change that resolution. Instead of creating the allowance for 72%, create it for 68%.
You had turned and asked Rita a question. You gave him an answer, but I didn't know what that was.
I had saw her shaking her head on the 7-year statute of limitations. I just wanted to confirm that was accurate.
Right, he's correct.
Okay.
I just affirmed it.
Off the record. I
Yeah, but did the chair ask you that?
No, nobody did. Well, the chair just did, technically.
Now, this doesn't mean that our credit will not receive payments for anything past that 7-year date. From time to time, once in a great while, we do still I'll get a check and I'll go, what the heck was this for? And after researching it, it was up for 15 years ago. So the collection process would still be out there under them. This is just for bookkeeping purposes, writing it off from the authority standpoint.
And I guess one other item I want to add, the calculation of how I perceive that what you show on your financial statement, your accounts receivable would decrease by 176,000. Your current allowance for uncollectible would decrease by 133,000. That'd result in about $43,000 going to bad debt expense in the current fiscal year. So you would want to revisit that and especially look at that from a budget perspective prior to the end of the year to make sure you've budgeted for that expense.
Does anybody have any more questions? Chair would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, Chair just made the motion.
Make a comment in that just because it's written off doesn't mean that we cease collections on it.
Right.
It's,
That's what she
Off with
said.
the books.
So a motion by Cullis, supported by Stillwell. Roll call, please.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Winchester,
Yes.
Mr. Stovall,
Yes.
Mr. Gambka,
yes.
Mr. Coolis,
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Now, the fire chief's performance review.
Thank you, Chair. You like that one segue, did you?
Everybody have those reviews complete?
Well, Miss Miller's not going to, but because she came in after we
Oh, okay.
submitted them.
So you're going to abstain?
Oh, I did one.
Oh, you did? How'd you
I
get it?
Pardon me?
How did you get it? Oh, it was in a packet. Because of the change, when they actually came out, you just come around, it's a review from 2022.
Yeah, this is my second meeting.
I just didn't think that, but it's the board's pleasure, you guys decide.
It's okay.
She's sitting, if you didn't want, you're a sitting board member.
Unless you want a sitting board member during the review period.
So you don't want to accept it then?
No.
She's had contact with him through the year in her role as a Rose Township clerk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he should accept it.
My personal opinion is there's nothing against you about that. I don't feel so. I mean, it's a review based on being a board member for the
Okay.
calendar year last year, and she just came on last December. Although I appreciate you doing that, but again, it's your guys' call.
Oh.
So I had 4 evaluations, a total score of 30. As a board, how do we want to deal with these? Do we go through them for public? No? Do we just enter the score and make a motion? Okay.
Yeah, so you gotta do the Is it the percent?
Based on who. Based on 4 instead of 5.
Say what again?
You gotta calculate the percentage, what percentage that of the total points.
It's 75%.
There's that 80 cutoff.
That being said, is that what you came up with, 75%?
Yes.
That being said, may I get the scores from the individual board members?
Yes. There was. I don't know if I have. Yeah. You mean the score assigned to a name?
Yes, sir.
I don't know that people put their names on them. I don't show names on these. Oh, so I have one Brad Stillwell. Evaluator score is at 10.
Mine was a 10.
Karen's is at 10. Mine is at 10. And Paul Gambka is 0.
Imagine that.
Sarah? Mr. Gambka, I didn't meet any of your
No,
expectations.
really, I'm really disappointed in you in that for that. For the last 6 months, you have spearheaded a recall against me and the township supervisor. I come in here and you say, well, how do I know these things? I came in here beginning of May as part of a group of with George Koulis, the attorney. I got here about 5 minutes early, and I hear you on the phone talking to somebody saying, yeah, and to paraphrase what I heard was that, yeah, I put Matt Lauer in charge of the recall. If you want any help, I'll give you the phone number. And sure enough, maybe 2 weeks later at the recall meeting down in Rose Township Hall, Matt Wiley was down there talking with Dan Johnson and Don Speaks and giving them all sorts of advice on how to recall both of us. So I think this is a.
Excuse me.
I've never heard anything so outlandish in my life.
No,
Are you
excuse
kidding
me. I have never been a part of this recall effort. I've not spoken to Dan Johnson.
I have a
Or anybody
recording of the whole meeting that someone gave me, and
I would like to hear it myself.
Yeah. Dan Johnson.
Regardless of that, that has nothing to do with my position as the fire chief
Yes,
of the
it
fire
does.
department.
Yes,
The way
it
I
does.
operate.
You're incompetent if you're
Yeah, this is
intermingling, as I said, intermingling, it's this issue or
This is, that is my.
So you gave me a 0 on my performance review because you think I am spearheading the recall campaign.
Yes, you did. And I have.
And I asked the board that they dismiss Mr. Gamka's submittal based on that ridiculous. He's just admitted he's not rating me on my performance as fire chief.
So
I think it's very much a good performance.
the questions under management, leadership, communication with the board is a 0. Budget conformance is a 0. Employee management and team effectiveness is a 0. But where it says evaluation comments, those comments are for the last 6 months, just as he said. The last 6 months, the chief has been trying to recall the supervisor, treasurer, the supervisor and treasurer of those
You
towns.
deny that you said that? I heard it with my own.
I absolutely 100% deny that,
Well,
and I am not
I know
spearheading this
what- I know
recall.
what I heard with my ears. What's it
I don't know what you're hearing.
I heard, I was standing right here, there was no one in here. I got here 5 minutes before George and the attorney, and you're sitting there using NOCFA time to try to recall me and the supervisor.
That is an outright lie.
No, it's not.
It is.
All right, I have no reason to lie about it.
I'm done with this conversation.
You're right, you don't have the reason,
So at this point,
but you do anyway.
we have the attorney here.
What a fool.
This-
Right, yeah. Fiduciary responsibility.
So it says the owner's copy to complete. And it's all zeros, but the reasoning that is written here, and I got cut off, it's a conversation, but it says the chief has hired stooges to spread lies, half-truths. I think that this is gross misconduct on the part of the chief. What is our, I mean, and I'm asking you this because this is something that dictates whether he gets his bonus or not. It has to do with pay. Is this something that has to be accepted under this format, or is it something that can be, that the board can decide upon?
No, it is something the board can decide upon. And let's talk employment law for a second. When it comes to employee evaluations, especially when you're looking at whether it be the Board-Pawlicki Act or something, when you have employee evaluations that are going to be inside the employee's folder, or they're going to follow the employee in the future, what the standard is a reasonable performance based upon the actions of the employee, not the outside political. That this is akin to saying that I am going to terminate this employee because he voted for Trump. If you have a political decision mingled with an employee's evaluation, those are two different things. It should be based upon the employee's objective, employee's performance. So if the comments said the employee did not meet the necessary qualifications and gave reasons specific to the evaluation, then I would say the board should accept it. But to the extent that there are no comments made specific to the employee's actual performance, that's problematic. And so I would recommend the board do a motion to set it aside or not include it within the other evaluations, because it does not have a reasonable basis for the evaluation itself based upon the employee's performance.
Okay. Would anybody else like to work like this with?
Can there be a motion to eliminate its input and have it voted on by the board?
That's basically what she said.
Yeah.
Some people don't know when to keep it.
I think after what the attorney has just told us, give Paul a chance to reevaluate.
Well, my evaluation stands. I know what I heard. I heard the chief.
Paul, that doesn't have nothing to do with his performance.
Yes,
You might
it
not
does.
like
His
him as a
performance.
person.
His
You
performance.
might not like, but is he running the show all right? Is he running his men good?
No.
Is he keeping the fire trucks clean?
Well, he's keeping
Is he making sure payroll's getting done
I was
accurately?
offered.
This is what this is about, not a personal thing.
This was not personal. This is a situation where he was using not for time, not for money, in that we were paying him and Matt Weil. And they were running around, bad mouthing. They hired these people, and this whole thing, this whole recall, everything came from this man here. And I heard it with my own 2 ears here.
Okay,
as to
then
what
tell
was
me,
going
so
on.
if you go through the evaluations, tell me specifically what that has to do with the budget.
I don't know
No,
what it has to do
no.
with the budget.
Tell me
because
specifically what it has to do with the budget and why you gave him the zero on the budget.
I'm not going to go through and explain every single item. I told you my basis. If the board wants to override it, that's it. I'm not gonna sit here and give him an A when what he was doing was what I consider misconduct.
All I'm saying is that it needs a reasonable basis in the performance of the employee. So if you were to say to me, Ms. Lauer, you're absolutely incorrect that this recall has everything to do with the budget, because I know that $10,000 of the authority money was spent on the recall against me, I would have said, okay, we can support this, but you're not tying the two together.
Well, I don't know how much
So,
money was spent
therefore-
because they've never filled out anything from they went and filed a political action committee, and that was it in March of 2022. Nothing has ever been changed with it. All I know is that, from what I heard, that the chief offered through the PAC they offered to pay Dan Johnson a sum of $10,000 if he was successful in recalling and supervising.
Now you're
delusional.
forgetting about,
This is being recorded, so you just keep saying.
You're liable, personal liability.
Let's have, please.
forgetting about the substance of the argument. You're basically making a non-locator argument, which means that you're making an argument that your husband, your wife has come home with a different kind of perfume on, so therefore she's having an affair.
Or
with
Rita,
another
I
fruit.
was
And
told
so
what to, I was told I was made an evaluation. Let's cut this to the
Right.
chase.
That's-
If the
the
board
chase
wants
is
to go
this.
ahead and overturn it, that's it. I was not going to give the chief a 10 or anything close to, given his conduct. And this is things that, this is not hearsay, this is not, half-truths. These are things that I heard, I got it. And the chief was telling people that he put the recall in the hands of Matt Weil. And 2 weeks later, Matt Weil was talking to Dan Johnson, and these are things that I know. So if the board wants to overturn that, that's their prerogative, but I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, yes.
Well, if the board doesn't feel that the reason was based upon his performance, then they have every right to do that.
I think his performance in dealing with the board is paramount in how in how this authority is run.
Well, then you probably should have placed those issues in the performance evaluation, as opposed to addressing the recall issue, which is a side issue to his performance as an employee. So an employee evaluation for any employee, I don't care if the employee works at McDonald's, is a police officer, a firefighter, a member of this board, you want your evaluation to be based upon your performance. And that is what anyone's gonna look at if you're sued. So if this board is sued over performance evaluation because he voted for Trump or our current president, I'll say his name at some point, Biden. I went to law school at this time, so, anyway,
Well, the board can do
that's
whatever
the
they
problem.
want.
That's what I'm saying, is that's a problem, is it can create problems for the board to the extent that you're doing a performance evaluation, not based upon the actual attributes of the employee's performance versus the employee's political or other actions which have nothing to do with his performance.
All right.
I would like to make a motion.
To the chair.
Can I make a motion first, please?
I just want to make a point of order as the union president of Local 5346, that a board member has just non-factually accused and slandered one of our members in a public meeting. And please be noticed. But the record reflects that.
Actually liable because he wrote it down.
So I would make a motion to exclude Paul Gambka's performance review because it's not based on the performance of the chief, but for political reasons.
I disagree.
Motion to exclude by Winchester. Is there support?
Support by Miller.
Support by Stillwell.
Support by Miller. And Stillwell. Roll call, please.
Ms. Miller,
Yeah.
Mr. Stillwell,
Yes.
Ms. Winchester.
Yes.
Mr. Gambka,
No.
Mr. Coolis.
Yes, motion carries. Piece of work.
Wow.
That puts the evaluation at 100% with 3 10s equaling 30. Do we need a motion to confirm that?
I'm sorry,
Does that have to be in motion form?
that should be a motion, yes.
Okay.
Need a motion that the score is 100%.
Yes.
I make a motion that the chief score is 100%.
Support.
Motion by Stillwell, support by Winchester. Any further discussion? Not appearing. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Ms. Winchester,
Yes.
Mr. Stillwell,
Yes.
Mr. Gambka,
No.
Mr. Coolis,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Mr. Chairman, may I have those copies as I normally do to file in my personal file in my office, please? And thank you very much to those of you who spoke me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your service. New business approval of updated WC policy. What would WC be for?
Workers' compensation.
Workers' comp. Approval of an updated workers' comp policy 30.07. Approval of new limited duty policy 30.08. Gee.
So because we do have a number of full-time people now, our current policy for workers' compensation was based on our paid on call and volunteer numbers from way back when this policy was drafted, and it stated that we did not have a limited or light duty policy. If there was an injury from workman's comp that was related to on the job, obviously they're covered, and the formulas are figured out for any of the part-time or on-duty calls that they would have missed being injured. But now that we have a full-time crew and we're growing, it was probably a good idea. And I also talked with our workers' compensation fund about this, to have a limited duty work to help keep our premiums down in the case that we do have injured full-time firefighters that are still able to do limited duty work, but not their full duty. The reason we have two policies is if the 30.08 new limited duty work policy is approved, we need to go back and revise the 30.07, which was the original workers' comp policy, which there's some verbiage that was added and highlighted on the page 1 of that just specifies that it is available now for our full-time career personnel. Does that make sense?
To break it down just a little so that we understand. So if a firefighter gets hurt or injured on the job and he goes to the doctor says he can't do his full job, but he could do desk work, or he could do light duty of some kind, that's what this allows for.
It does.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
By Winchester, support.
I'll second it.
Support by Stillwell. Any further discussion?
Just for the board members' knowledge, I did review this with the labor attorney that did our union negotiations also. So he's also looked at it.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Mr. Stillwell,
Yes.
Mr. Gambka,
Yes.
Mr. Poulos,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Winchester.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Last thing on our new business is to go into closed session.
No.
We're in D.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote the number down. Back up. Okay, annual NOCFA Board of Officer appointment. We would take nominations for the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. Now, all at once, take turns.
Well, you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
I would nominate George Coulis for chair.
It's Cullis.
Collis.
Cullis.
Collis.
Colors, yeah.
I would support.
So nomination for chair. Any other nominations? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now for vice chair. Motion carries. I'll nominate Karen Winchester.
I'll support.
Second.
All in favor? Any other nominations? Sorry. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then for secretary. Better nominate somebody for there. You could hear it.
Whoever's secretary now can do it. Do good.
Actually, is that you?
That's me.
Oh, it's Karen.
Well, she can have it.
She's vice.
You want both?
Do you want it?
Mm-hmm.
Debbie wants it.
No, Karen can have it. Karen's the secretary.
Okay.
But you don't want it.
Secretary.
All in favor of Karen being the secretary?
We got a
Who wants to
motion,
second?
he motioned,
Yeah.
Somebody has to second it.
yeah,
I'll second. Is that what you want, Karen?
yeah.
Okay. I should ask you.
Okay. Any other nominations? Obviously not. So we will go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries.
Excuse me, Sharon. We didn't, I thought we elected Winchester for vice chair.
She got
So she's holding too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very
She
much.
gets paid double.
I think I've held two for many years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she gets paid 0 times 2.
Okay.
Along with the admiration of her endearing. Okay. Yep. Yes. All right. Now we'll move to E, which is to go into closed session. That will require a motion. I will make a motion that we go into closed session. Is there support?
Support,
Support by Winchester. Does that need to be a roll call or is that? That can be all in favor, or does that be
Thank you.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I make a motion to resume the meeting.
support,
Motion by Stillwell, support by Winchester to come out of closed session. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, if you would, go ahead and have the conversation.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do, and I thought it would, or the board thought it would make sense that the public at large understood some of the scope of the closed session. As counsel, there were prior board members who actually did call other attorneys, not Madden Hauser, made complaints, made some arguably defamatory statements. I had conversations with all of you about there were legal options available, legal roads to take if you wanted to pursue those options. And they fell in line with our fiduciary duties board member presentation that we had earlier. My understanding is the board's decision is it doesn't want to pursue any of those legal avenues. My recommendation was not to pursue those legal avenues because it would cost you more money than you're going to receive. However, my obligation is to advise you guys whenever you have the ability to make those decisions. And that was pretty much the scope of things. Did I miss anything in a nutshell? No? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay.
We're good? Yes, sir. Okay. Then we can go down to reports, which includes the monthly incident data sheet.
So in your packet was December 22 run totals for the month. We did a total of 88 calls. And then, of course, the calendar year 2022 totals, which was the second page back. For the year 2022, we did a total of 1,098 calls. As you can see, we're down about 180 or so from the 2021 year. A lot of those were medicals. The higher run counts last year for medicals was 762 versus 670 this year. That was due to the COVID pandemic in 2021 that we had obviously lots of things. We also did less service calls than we did the year before by 22, 23. Hazardous conditions and severe weather calls were down from the year prior. So, out of district runs last year, we did 70 mutual aid medicals and 41 mutual aid fires. We had a total of 773 total EMS related calls. We transported exactly 500 patients last year. And we had 275 that we did not transport. The average call time for emergency calls last year was 7.9 minutes on 365 priority 1 calls. Run counts for the individual townships were 470 for Holly Township, 457 for Rose Township. We had 59 calls out on I-75 and 112 out of district runs. Any questions?
Out of district would be mutual aid.
Those were our community, yeah, our neighbors, yeah. No questions? Continue on with my report. We did start, as you heard at the swearing in ceremony, the 2 full-time positions a couple of weeks ago. We've already seen the scheduling go much more easier because we now have those 2 positions in the schedule. We are currently working on the Assistance of Firefighter grants for this year that opened up a few weeks ago. They're closing February 10th. We had a meeting, an officers meeting last week, and we are going to resubmit for another brush truck, which we have the last 3 years, but keep getting turned down. But we're going to be aggressive and do that again. On top of that, we are going to write another grant for some radio equipment, some automatic external defibrillators, and am I missing something there?
Yeah, we're doing an audit of all of our turnout.
Turnout.
And any of the turnout gear that's over 10 years old or 2 NFPA cycles that sets the standard for gear, we're going to try to get those replaced because it's like $500 a shot. So, you know, we'll have
5,000.
Yeah. So there's a fair amount of money, even if we only replace, you know, 6 of them. And then the other in connection with the gear is another gear dryer. We have a gear dryer up here. We can include that with the gear, with the push to reduce the number of firefighter cancer cases. You want to encourage and make sure everybody washes their gear after every fire. The trouble is you're not supposed to wear wet gear to another fire because in the NFPA standards, they talk about you going into a fire with wet gear right out of the chutes and you get steam and you burn the people with that. We can't dry the dirty gear fast enough. So we're going to see how that works. Just put in the grant for that.
So all those items will be writing grants for. We just started today. I just actually started the brush truck one today, getting all the data for that.
Chief,
Yes.
who writes your grants? You?
Myself, Deputy Chief Smith, Barb Green, who's a former firefighter that does, well, she started with us. Now on her spare time, she does for smaller rural fire department, but she still helps us out a lot too. Really, there's a handful of us that are inside that do our own grants, gather the information.
What determines? I know there's, like Fenton has their own grant person. They hire a person.
There's a lot of
Is there a big difference with that? How it's written and how it's done and all that? There's just XX and actually got to fill it out and that's it.
So the problem with hiring somebody to write your grant, and the the handful of us that do the grants, we've been doing these for years. We've been doing them for 20 years.
Okay.
We're pretty successful at it. We've all gone to some type of a grant workshop, at least more than one time, on occasion. So we're very familiar with how it works. Barbara's kind of our liaison. She gets in touch with the grant managers at FEMA, so she keeps tabs on, who's the newest person that's working, that's represented us, and what type of personality, you kind of get to read them and.
What you know, who you know?
Exactly.
Okay.
Even though it really doesn't work like that, it's difficult to get in touch with them, but she makes it a little easier.
Okay.
So, again, we've gotten pretty good at it. I don't think we've ever hired a grant writer, have we? The downside of hiring a grant writer is you got to pay them no matter what. And if you don't get the grant,
you're out that money.
You're out that money.
Okay.
When you,
I guess I was after how difficult it was to
it's
make it happen.
it's not an easy, 1-2 page application. It's multiple, 25, 30 pages of data and narratives, and it gets very, very detailed. So it is a lot of work, but we've always kept it in-house.
And to the point is the brush truck has a whole different set of data that you have to provide and narratives than for turnout here.
Yeah, each thing you're asking.
Well, it sounds like you guys are the ones that know those numbers and ones.
Yeah.
So you're continue as is.
Yeah.
Just curious. I just knew talking to other people that they have grant writers, so that's why I was curious.
Yes, a lot of buttons.
Okay.
Does that complete your report?
Yes. Unless, Chief Wild, did you have anything? Chief Smith, did you have any other? Okay. I am complete, sir.
Okay. We will turn to the Firefighters Association.
Good evening. So PJ Kravitz, Vice President of the Pueblo County Firefighters Association. Not a lot to report, but we did get contacted by Springfield Township's Association last week, and we had a meeting last week. I had a meeting with them, and then we had our regular membership meeting, and we have agreed to combine with them for a golf outing fundraiser to benefit Ride for Autism, which is a group that supports autistic families in this area with different outings and stuff like that. So Springfield has been very successful with golf outings in the past. The last one that they did prior to COVID hitting, they brought in over $25,000. So what the basis of this is basically going to be golf outing on tentatively August 26th at Fenton Farms. We'll get everything nailed down, but all the proceeds, 60% will go to Ride to Autism, and then 20% will go to each of the two associations. So a little bit of bonus for us to get, our members involved, get them out there, beating down doors, getting prizes, stuff like that, getting teams together. So as things firm up, we'll get more information on. I know a lot of you people are golfers, and you guys will get teams together. So aside from that, we had our boot drive back in December. That was pretty successful. I don't remember what the numbers were on that. About $7,000 on that. So we're doing pretty good. But yeah, right now our biggest thing coming up is going to be this golf outing and get that going and get some money to these kids with autism.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Holly Township. Okay. If you drive up North Holly Road and take a look at the farmstead, you'll see a red fence out in the middle of the pasture. That's where the barn is going to be, the one that's coming from Oakland County Parks, the Ernst barn. If you had a chance on Facebook, on the Holly Township Supervisor page or my page, I posted they did a drone where they flew it around before they started, then they flew it around midway, and they flew it around, they got it all stripped out, just the frame is standing there. Now we can work on the foundation. Once that's done, they'll start to dismantle and bringing up and put pieces together. So it's getting exciting. That's all we have at this time. Rose Township.
We advertised for people to replace Glenn Noble. We had 11 people apply for the trustee position. We interviewed the people this last Wednesday. We had a very good turnout. I was very pleased with the quality of the candidates for the most part. And at the end of the day, we voted to appoint lady by the name Agnes Meach to the board.
Mish?
Meach.
I don't even pretend to know how to spell it.
MEISCH.
Yeah, I was only one letter off. Okay. Anything else, Debbie?
No, we just did that one, same right?
Okay. Mr. Citizen at Large?
Go report.
Okay. Then we will adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting will be.
Public comment?
I mean, do it.
Yeah. All right.
Tim Seal, 9237 Buckhorn Lake Road, ex-Holly Township resident, current Rose Township resident.
No way.
Told you I needed property. I got two things I wanted to cover real quick. One is I've helped write 2 grants and had 2 grants approved. So I'm going to be retiring and going into grant writing apparently. There's some money to be made there. Second thing is I think this is really a good time to bring this up. Chuck, was it? From the accounting firm, the auditors, Charlie. He makes a point, and I'm not sure that everybody, including the general public, understands when he references your fund balance. Unlike a normal municipality, most municipalities will have what they call a fund balance. It has been termed in the past rainy day fund, fund equity. Now the latest, greatest term is called the fund balance. And that balance is basically the rainy day fund in the event you ever run into problems. The problem I have with year after year hearing these audits and the auditors saying that we need to improve this amount is that we have our building cost, our capital improvement fund buried into our fund equity. And I think that's a very dangerous thing to do. Most municipalities will have capital improvement funds that go ahead and they have a capital improvement fund for the fire department, they have a capital improvement fund for the police department. These are funds they build for the things of purchasing equipment. Now, I bring this up for a couple reasons of importance. And one is we're different in our own because we're a fire authority and we are not a municipality. It has been brought up before, and I'm not trying to get into any argument about being a taxing authority. However, when you look at individual municipalities that levy taxes to the people for the services they provide, a lot of times the amount of taxes they levy that are allowed by law exceeds the amount of expenditures they have in a given fiscal year. That money gets transitioned or turned over to the fund equity, which is in case the worst case scenario happens. Now, when you look at SEMCOG, the Southeast Michigan Consortium on Governments, they used to recommend 30% of your annual operating budget to be a A++ bond rating. And they've gone as high as 50%. So if you look at, let's just say, for example, an $800,000 a year budget for municipality, keeping 50% of that on hand in your fund equity, you get a very good bond rating. The authority has the ability within its articles of incorporation and within law to bond out for purchases. However, we don't have any bond rating because we don't have our own fund equity. Our bond rating would be relatively low in comparison to a municipality that has, let's say, an $800,000 general operating budget annually and $3.2 million sitting in their fund equity or their fund balance. I think it's imperative that as a board, we try to do something to build that fund balance Right now, as we currently are set up within the authority, we go to each municipality as the chief writes a budget and says, here's what I think we're gonna need. Here's what I think we're gonna need, and I think what we need for our capital improvement fund. That doesn't do anything as far as building a fund equity. Each municipality has their own fund equity or fund balance. I think some of that needs to get put into a reserve for the authority. Only other option the authority has is to become its own taxing authority, build its own revenue, create its own fund balance, and stock it in safe investments like the municipalities do to earn interest, so that when that rainy day does hit, we're covered instead of having to go to each municipality and beg to keep gluing the parts together. So I just wanted to bring that up because I don't think the average person understands what that fund is and where it's derived from and how it's built. That's all.
Anyone else for public comment?
Dan Johnson, 8635 Tipsco Trail, Holly, Michigan. I just sat here and for about 5 minutes or more listened to Mr. Gambka rant on and slander me. Nobody's ever offered me $10,000 to have anything to do with the NOCFA PAC. There are no North Oakland County Fire Authority employees that are active members of that. The PAC was started by Don Spees and I joined him. Don Spees and myself are the ones who went to Oakland County Elections Division and had the recall petition or the recall language approved. For you to sit here and slander the chief, Mr. Weil, who I might have had 5 or 10 words with in the past year, and that would be to say hello at a community function, you're delusional, Paul. I would ask the board, being as he did that as a representative of NOCFA, that you guys censure him. It's ridiculous that he sat there and ran on and ran on and ran on and told flat out lies. And if you don't, you guys aren't doing your jobs.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Julia Stern, 1445 Munger Road. I think this was a great meeting. We got fresh meat here. We got great representatives. The new attorney, wow.
Yeah.
Rita, I don't know her last name, but boy, I'm really in favor of her. She's really doing a great job. We got a great recording secretary. All positive things. And another great thing that you might not have noticed, Gambka revealed himself. He made himself, he sat here and the heat was building up. It was like he was in hell. As when Rita finished, he had to go get a drink. It was so hot, and he came out and he decided that he might as well admit all of his shortcomings and made himself liable, personally liable. He admitted that he wasn't doing his fiduciary responsibility. I'm hoping that Jeremy personally sues his ass, because we got a real great board here now. And as Rita, I'm sorry, I don't know her last name, no disrespect. She signaled that she thinks that 2023 is going to be a great year, and it's turning out to be that way. In spite of the one, he wanted to show his lack of intelligence and his lack of credibility. He got signals that he shouldn't be keeping on the path what he was doing, and he just kept digging and digging and digging. And how he made his report, his evaluation of the chief was just incredible, and it's the negative meaning of incredible. But he just kept on, didn't know when to shut up.
Anyone else for public comment? Once, twice? Now I'll adjourn the meeting at 8:49. No.